So as a hardcore Nintendo fan and hardcore fan of platformers, is it weird that I've never played the original Donkey Kong Country games? If I'm honest, the SNES is probably the single Nintendo console I have the least experience with, and every time I thought about taking the plunge, I just wasn't feeling it. A platformer about an animal jumping around the jungle? No, thank you. I only play games for real men. I did play through Tropical Freeze, but apparently I'm the only person on Earth who didn't think it was anything to write home about. I'm not saying it was a bad game or anything, it just didn't impress me, but people are ravenous about this game. If their next breath doesn't have a new funky mode, they're spitting it back out. I've never been one to disregard an entire series after being let down by one entry though, and who knows, maybe the early games are different enough that they'll hit the right spot. But if I'm doing this, I'm going all in. They just added the third game to Switch Online a couple months ago, and the first two were already there, so rather than just playing and talking about one of them, why don't I play all three and rank them from worst to best? First, a little history though. Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, and Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble are a set of 3 Donkey Kong 2D platformers developed by Rare and released one year after another from 1994 to 1996. To differentiate themselves from the pack, they were generally much shorter games with a bigger focus on variety and more grounded level concepts. Wait a second, am I talking Kong or Bandicoot? Real talk, has anyone else noticed how eerily similar these franchises are? I mean, sure, Donkey Kong hasn't committed any war crimes, but I'd keep my eye on him at this rate. The other big thing that made these games really stand out back in the day is their character sprites. The SNES was not especially competent when it came to 3D visuals, which is no shocker considering Star Fox needed a special chip jammed into it just to make them happen, but the devs had the pretty clever idea to create 3D models anyway, then take 2D pictures of those models and use them as sprites. It's a really weird roundabout way of getting things to look the way they wanted, but I'll step up and say that it was the right choice. These games' visuals are a huge part of their charm, and at least to me, the only art style that even comes close to challenging it is, well, the Retro Studios one. But come on, Donkey Kong with actual polygons? Bullshit! Bullshit! I think that's enough backstory though, so first up is 1994's Donkey Kong Country. When I finished this game for the first time, I went through a bit of a case of Tropical Freeze deja vu. It was nowhere near as good as I was hoping. But then something weird happened. I sat down ready to write out my thoughts on why I didn't like it, and then I realized that for whatever reason, I really wanted to play it again. So I did, and what the f? This game's good? I seriously don't know if I've ever had such a drastic turnaround on a game, let alone over the course of one day, but the second playthrough was a blast. The way I see it, there's a lot of stuff in this series, especially in the first entry here, that I think is pretty damn bad, but the framework is somehow enjoyable enough that it eventually overpowers most of it. Even despite those problems, however, it only took the first playthrough to identify and appreciate the 3 keys that make this game work so well: the controls, the secrets, and the music. I don't know that I've ever felt more in control of my actions than I do in this game, and that includes in real life. Just running around is buttery smooth, and missing a jump always feels like my fault since I have so much control over my momentum. Blazing along as fast as possible is supremely satisfying in a ton of these levels, and to me it's one of the biggest incentives to go back and replay them. This flow is broken up at least slightly by the bonus rooms, but I have no problem with that because not only are they completely optional, but finding secrets and getting bonuses is just a good, fun feeling. It does have a tendency to pull shit like this though. Oh duh, it's the secret pit. You can tell it's the secret pit because it looks like every other pit. And of course, the music is god tier. If you know a famous DK song, it's almost certainly from this game. David Wise is a genius, and the only way I think you can describe his work here is iconic. The fact that they even got that much right on their first attempt at this is impressive, and they deserve full credit in that regard. But it's too bad they stuck the landing using their faces. The single biggest gripe I have with Donkey Kong Country is its game design, which is unfortunate because it's a video game. I don't know if I've ever played a platformer, let alone a Nintendo one, that has made me feel more like the developers don't like me. You've got enemy placements picked specifically to screw up your movement patterns, spawn in at awkward times off screen, and enter the screen so fast you don't have time to react. You've got automated segments that send you to your death without warning, and you've even got some leaps of faith too. Well, kinda. Okay, you see, the bigger problem here is that I feel like the camera is just too zoomed in. I'll assume this decision came about because of how many small enemies and projectiles you have to maneuver around, but if that's the case, it really feels like the zoom was changed after the levels were designed, which does not work. I don't like having to stop and wait on this platform for the camera to slowly catch up to me and end up revealing nothing anyway. Sometimes this also makes it really hard to see if there is an enemy on that platform, and whoops! Look, it's stupid! That's what you get for playing our game, loser! Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's word for word. Oh, here I go again, but even within how similar the DKC and Crash trilogies are, this game reminds me a ton of Crash 1. What with how a formula that can lend itself so well to speeding through the levels is loaded with slow, draining level designs. It doesn't make them terrible games, or even bad ones, but I'm pretty frequently left with this lingering feeling that they're squandering their full potential. The biggest sign or example of this all, as well as probably the weakest part of the game overall, is its set of boss fights. Dodge whatever attack they go for and jump on their head. That's it. Except for against the ones that you don't even have to jump on. Oh, what a mix-up. It also doesn't help that a few are pretty shamelessly repeated, and that they all have at least some period of invincibility, which is always so annoying to wade through. Plus, aside from against the bee, there's really no indication in any of these fights when the invincibility ends, which is a bafflingly awful design choice. At least it goes out with a nice, satisfying bang. K. Rool is easily the best fight in the game. I could see the argument that the man taking 10 hits to die is a little excessive, but he is the final boss, so it's hard to complain too much. To end on a high note, I gotta say, I really like the animal buddies. A bunch of the levels have a crate hiding in them for you to find with one of these fine lads inside, and you can often take them with you for the entire rest of the level. They're never required to beat a level, but they always do a good job at making the more frustrating segments go down smoother, and keeping from losing them becomes a top priority since each one is such an invaluable asset. If I were to pick a favorite, I think it's pretty unanimous that On Guard the Swordfish is the best one. Not only can he attack enemies from the front on his own, but he makes water levels tolerable. Oh my god, the boy should get a goddamn award for that. Picking a least favorite is a lot harder because they genuinely all are good to have, but I guess I'll go with Winky the Frog just because the way he hops can be kind of unwieldy and it led to my death once or twice. DKC 1 really is a classic, and it's easily gonna join the likes of Mega Man 7 in that problematic list of games that I just play on loop rather than playing the new games I've never played before. Thank God this game's good. But if all of that caught you off guard after the pessimistic start to this journey, try this one on for size. Donkey Kong Country 2: Diddy's Conquest is one of the best video games I have ever played in my life. This game is miraculously amazing, and it's weird to say because I honestly think I have more problems with it than the first, and I think it's actually worse at the things that made that one good. Even though it's the same formula, it's just good in its own way. If I were to put them both on a graph, I'd place DKC 1 on a pretty consistent line in terms of enjoyability. Meanwhile, DKC 2 would fly high above it, and occasionally tumble to the lowest depths with some legitimately dreadful levels here and there. They are at least made a little bit better by the fact that DK doesn't come along on this adventure, but Dixie Kong does instead. Much like in the newer games, she is so good that it kind of loops back around to being bad design, because there's basically no time in which you'd realistically want anyone else. I love you, Diddy, I really do, but if I was allowed to play Dixie and Dixie, I would. But her being good doesn't make things a cakewalk though. By far the #1 thing I knew about this game going in is how ludicrously difficult it could get. I don't think the other games in the series are particularly easy, but the pain you'll likely feel transitioning from any of them to 2 is like getting hit with a little static and thinking, alright, I think I'm ready to try electrocution. The saving grace of this, and a huge part of what makes the game so magical, is how consistently this difficulty is brought forth by pure fair challenge. Every once in a while, if you're zipping from platform to platform, you may get caught by some crap you can't react to, like in DKC 1, but the overwhelming majority of the time, you have nobody but yourself to possibly blame for the death, because it's just f***ing hard in an organic, enjoyable way. Most of the time. Okay, it's time to talk about something that drove me up the goddamn wall throughout this whole trilogy, but feels most appropriate to mention now. You see, guys, I actually possess psychic powers. Just by asking you a single question, I can easily come up with a fact about you. Don't believe me? Here's a line designating the start and end of a theoretical level. If I asked you where you should place a checkpoint in this level, where would you place it? If you picked anywhere within this box, around 40 to 60% through the level, then I can use my psychic powers to infer that you were not a developer of Donkey Kong Country games, because chocolate dipped, Christ, I couldn't tell you how many times the only one was placed within the first 25% or so, and this game was possibly the most egregious offender on that front. I get that part of what makes it so good is the gauntlet of tough challenges you have to go through one after another, but with almost no exceptions, I've never felt that checkpoint frugality was good design in any way. It just becomes stupid when you're going through obstacles 11 through 39 line over and over because 40 keeps tripping you up. If there's one thing to actually appreciate about it though, I guess it does a fine job at making lives actually matter. I will never pass up an opportunity to grab an extra life or banana coin because you never know when a random challenge is gonna end up being the bane of your existence and draining your life count. But what do banana coins have to do with your life count, I hear you asking? Don't worry about how. Well, rather than just going to a Candy Kong save barrel to save the game, you have to go to a Kong college and meet up with Wrinkly Kong. While most of them will let you save for free when you go in for the first time, subsequent visits require you to pay to save your game. What kind of bullshit is this? They expect me to pay for this garbage that I can easily get with more modern technology? It really is college! Something else that's been almost entirely changed for this game is the concept of the animal buddies. While you can still occasionally find one in a crate and hop on them like before, you'll now much more often find an animal barrel, which transforms you into the animal, usually for almost the entirety of a stage. This is probably the one formula change this game made that I think completely blows, and I can't really tell if I'm alone on that. It's not really that different from riding them, but it's different enough to make me wonder why they even bothered turning the mechanic into such a less cohesive version of itself. Most of the time, you're running around as two Kongs. Sometimes, you're riding animals around as two Kongs. And then a couple times you're just not a Kong for some reason. They feel so out of place. If you go into a barrel with two Kongs, you'll have an extra animal hit point, and if you lose it, you can grab a Kong barrel to get it back. The stupid part is that losing that bonus hit point actually loses you a Kong while you don't even have Kongs, and that's super annoying. And the absolute worst of this comes with a level in which the Satan of the Animal Buddy world makes his grand entrance. It hurt me so much that I actually went to the internet for the opinions of others to find out if I was insane. And without fail, every time I looked for people's favorite animal buddies, I found Squitter the Spider at or near the top. But this single level made me f***ing hate him. Not only is it one of the worst offenders of the checkpoint in the first 25% curse, but the web-spitting gameplay is so slow. And on top of that, a ton of the level revolves around creating platforms for yourself over bottomless pits, and sometimes the web platform just goes away instantly for no reason. I can guarantee you that I died more in this one level than the entire rest of the game combined, so it. It is one of the worst levels I think I've ever played in a video game. By the end of it, I was about ready to put my fist through the center of the screen just to have a vaguely accurate experience of smashing this stupid bug. That's right, I'll destroy my own property. That'll teach you to do something I don't like. Let's quickly finish off all the bad stuff while I'm angry so we can get back to happy mode. Red Hot Ride takes the runner-up spot on my level list. It's just so boring and sloppy to control, I wish I could skip it outright. I also hate Castle Crush because we got so close to making it through this whole game without a goddamn auto-scroller, and it moves painfully slowly. The boss fights also take even more hits on average than previously, and tend to have even more invincibility, which generally means that most of them just take a while, as you do the same thing over and over again. Angry mode can disappear now though, because despite those slight annoyances, I actually think the boss fights are a huge step up from the first one. Every single one of them is satisfyingly unique, and always rewarding to take down. Funnily enough, K-Rool actually takes one less hit to take down in this one, but it's still a much longer and more difficult fight, and a fittingly awesome way to end off this overall awesome game. I know I tore at a new one there for a little bit, but don't let my frustration fool you. This game might just be a top 10er for me. I played through it 3 times, not even necessarily to further cement my opinions or gather footage for it, but instead just to have fun playing it again. If you're a little intimidated by its challenge, I would recommend trying DKC 1 first, but I do think everyone who likes platformers should try it anyway, because it's really a blast for 90% of its duration. Needless to say, I was pretty hyped going into DKC 3. 2 is just so good, and it's such an improvement over the first. Could 3 possibly be even better? No, but it is still pretty fun. Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble is the textbook example of the phrase, yeah, you made it better, but you made it worse. The visuals have reached the peak of the SNES. It's somewhat unbelievable how detailed they are, but goddammit, that also means you're gonna be far more likely to visually lose your Kongs as they blend into the background. A lot of the bosses have reached new levels of creativity, laughing in the face of the first game, but because of that, a lot of the ways you defeat them are really weird and not fun. fun, son of a bitch. The overworld has a ton more to do and allows you to explore it freely, including situations where you can choose which world you want to tackle first. And now I'm stressing about finding map secrets and possibly doing levels out of order. Okay, come on, man. At this point, you're just changing things for the sake of changing them, and all it does is complicate things that didn't need to be complicated. It's like if I made it so I had to solve a game of Simon Enter My Room. Yeah, I guess that's more interesting than just opening the doorknob, but who would put unnecessary Simon in their game? Fair enough, I guess. What the fuck? Thankfully, the average level isn't bogged down by that kind of thing. I do look at the toboggan levels as a downgrade from the roller coaster ones, but other than that, I'd say the spirit of DKC2's awesome levels is almost entirely intact. By that same track, though, some of my less enjoyed things about it return as well. Allow me to give you an exact recreation of my face when I came across the first animal barrel. It's also a bit of a problem that I think I've actually found a new worst animal buddy in the entire series. In fact, let's not even leave it up to decision. Squitter is nowhere near this bad, and he actually has some levels in this game that are pretty fun. Ellie is an elephant with restricted movement options, little overall utility, and worst of all, is scared of mice. Now, normally I wouldn't care if someone was scared of mice. I don't exactly bring mice around to scare people with. What can I say? I'm a saint. The problem is that some of the levels deliberately put them in Ellie's path, and not only can you not hurt them, you can't even jump over them, which means you gotta backtrack your dirty elephant ass back to the closest barrel, and then backtrack through the obstacles without the barrel breaking in order to kill them. Just based off of this mouse level, I was ready to call it. I was just gonna tell you guys, Ellie sucks so hard I quit the game, but thankfully they also realized how awful this was and stopped putting mice in her levels later on, all of those later levels being kind of unoffensively mediocre. Congratulations, Ellie. I hereby dub you barely not garbage. One of the weirdest things about this game, though, is that there were a couple mechanics that were just straight up worse or even less functional than in either of the previous games. The first I noticed was the bonus rooms. Aside from the fact that I think they're probably my least favorite room types overall, my bigger problem was that pretty much every time I left one after winning or losing, I had no idea where I was. Like seriously, sometimes it just drops you like 30 yards away from where you went into it, and I have no clue why they would have done that. It was painfully confusing. But the even more baffling moments I experienced were in regards to the switch Kong button of all things. Sometimes it just straight up did not work. I would just be sitting there, mashing the button to switch to my other Kong, and it just would not do it until I moved to a different spot. These games all run exactly the same, and yet I never experienced this in 1 or 2. How the hell can it be broken here? But if I'm honest with you, there's one last, bigger problem I have with Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, and that's that it's the third in a trilogy that's pretty consistent throughout, meaning I don't honestly have much to say about it compared to the others. So, that lightning level really sucked, huh? I mean, seriously, I swear there are certain parts where you are forced to take a hit. Nowhere near as good as the Treetop levels, those were really fun. 3 probably has the most vertical level design of the trilogy, and this was a good showcase for it. Overall, though, I think my favorite level type is the waterfall. I did have a problem here and there with platform hitboxes, and the weird 3D thing they tried to go for short-circuited my brain a bit, but that doesn't mean much in the face of that brilliant music and its gorgeous visuals. I also think this is probably the best Final K. Rool fight in the series. He takes just as many hits as he did in 2, but he mixes things up a lot more throughout the fight, and he even has a mini-boss you have to beat before him. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, this is Kiddy Kong, by the way. I just realized I never introduced him. I make truly riveting entertainment, don't I? Alright, let's just cut to the chase. Let's rank everything in the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy. You may have thought I was just gonna rank the games as a whole, but honestly, considering what you just sat through, I think my list would be pretty easy to predict, so let's take it all the way. Number 1, Kong-parison. How do the individual Kongs stack up to one another? DK and Kiddy are heavier and stronger, but move a bit slower than the other two. Really, this just amounts to them being able to kill big enemies by jumping on them, and not much else, so they get the 2 worst spots just for being slower, and I'll put Kiddy in dead last because at least DK isn't f***ing annoying. The only super unique attribute among the other 2 is that Dixie can glide after a jump. So, yeah. Number 2, Kong-parison. I should be shot for these puns. How does each playable pair of Kong stack up to the others? You may not think this matters, but I'd say it does, because in this case, having Dixie as an alternate option actually boosts Kiddy's pair above DK's, leaving the pair of Kongs that feel the most agile as the easy winners. Number 3, locales. This is a supremely easy one. It's 1, 2, 3. I know I complained about losing yourself in the backgrounds of 3, but I can't lie to myself and say it happened more than a couple times, and it would be absolute heresy to say that anything the others cooked up could even come close to matching the sheer beauty of the waterfalls. The toboggan levels really do melt my eyes though, in ways that the minecart and roller coaster levels didn't. I don't know why they're so painful. Number 4, boss battles, and it's another easy one, 1, 3, 2. I feel wrong for saying this was easy considering how little fun I think most of the fights from both 1 and 3 are, but I decided that I'll take dumb but interesting over dumb but dumb any day of the week. Number 5, playable animal buddies. I don't really feel like spending time explaining the intricacies and enjoyability of each and every single one, as I find their perfect best to worst spot on the list, so On Guard, Squawks, Quawks, Ramby, Rattly, Espresso, Winky, Squitter, Ellie, Perry. I'd bet you're surprised to see Perry on the bottom considering I never took the time to complain about them, but they're at the bottom because they barely even count. All they do is float above your head and mimic all of your movements, which means their only real utility is giving you an extra hitbox to worry about and collecting random shit they just decided to put up high for no reason. And thus I guess you could argue that the bird itself isn't playable and shouldn't count, in which case congratulations Ellie, you're the worst. Number 6, soundtracks. Now this was the absolute hardest ranking to do because let's be real, they're all equally amazing. But that's cheating, so I'm gonna split hairs. DKC3 has some phenomenal tunes in it, but I think the first game is just too iconic and beloved to not be at the top. Or at least that's what I would say if Forest Interlude wasn't the single greatest song in the trilogy by such a wide margin that it single-handedly pushes 2 up to the top. Woo! And lastly, of course, number 7, the games. I'm giving 3rd place to DKC1, 2nd to DKC3, and it's been blatantly obvious that I'm going to give 1st place to DKC2. I was sincerely worried after that first playthrough of the original game, and I honestly started to second guess devoting myself to playing 2 more after it, but needless to say, I am very glad I did that. It's kind of shocking how magical the second game's refinement of that formula is, and I can also really appreciate its weird experimental follow-up. Oh, kinda like Crash 2. This whole thing started with me playing a Donkey Kong Country game and saying, damn, why does this game get so much love? And it's ending with me saying, damn, where the hell is all this game's love? I wholeheartedly recommend the entire trilogy, but if you don't feel like sitting through 3 different games, at least give Diddy's Conquest a shot for me. It's legitimately fantastic, so try it out and reaffirm that I'm not crazy for liking it as much as I do. You know, I usually ask the voices in my head for reaffirmation, but for the past month or so, they've just been saying, Donkey Kong! Please, if there's a therapist out there that knows what's happening,